ها سويناه بس كده
I think why? I want to listen. I don't want to talk. Yeah, like what's gonna do if your friend like not
لا لا هذا ميزان هذا العنقود
شنو الانجل كيفك انت يلا سوي بس خلها تغير مكانه بس
Assalamualaikum everyone. If you could all please take your seats. Inshallah will begin the program very soon.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
تقدر تعمل مكان هنا صور صور مكاني
لا هي اوكي
Boys, there's seats at the front.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone to this evening's Barakah program. Inshallah for tonight's program, we will begin with a Quran recitation and then this will be followed by the main talk by Brother Ali Shaban, inshallah. And after that, we will continue with a short interactive activity, a trilogy hunt. And then inshallah, we will have some time to socialize over pizza and refreshments. So inshallah, to begin, I would like to now ask Brother Ja'far al-Mushrafawi to recite the Holy Quran. Please let's welcome him with the loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad
محمد.
Surah Al-Ra'd, page 249 and page 250. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم را. تلك آيات الكتاب والذي أنزل إليك من ربك الحق ولكن أكثر الناس لا يؤمنون. الله الذي رفع السماوات بغير عمد ترونها ثم استوى على العرش وسخر الشمس والقمر كل يجري لأجل مسمى يدبر الأمر يفصل الآيات لعلكم بلقاء ربكم توقنون. وهو الذي مد الأرض وجعل فيها رواسي وأنهارا ومن كل الثمرات جعل فيها زوجين اثنين يغشي الليل النهار إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل صنوان وغير صنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. وإن تعجب فعجب قولهم أإذا كنا ترابا أإنا لفي خلق جديد أولئك الذين كفروا بربهم وأولئك الأغلال في أعناقهم وأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. ويستعجلونك بالسيئة قبل الحسنة وقد خلت من قبلهم المثلات وإن ربك لذو مغفرة للناس على ظلمهم وإن ربك لشديد العقاب. ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه إنما أنت منذر ولكل قوم هاد. الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد وكل شيء عنده بمقدار. عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير المتعال سواء منكم من أسر القول ومن جهر به ومن هو مستخف بالليل وسارب بالنهار له معقبات من بين يديه ومن خلفه يحفظونه من أمر الله إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد له وما لهم من دونه من وال هو الذي يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينشئ السحاب الثقال ويسبح الرعد بحمده والملائكة من خيفته ويرسل الصواعق فيصيب بها من يشاء وهم يجادلون في الله وهو شديد المحال صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Brother Jafar, for that beautiful recitation. We will now move on to the main lecture for this evening, called The Chains of Freedom by Brother Ali Sha'ban. Let's all please welcome him with a loud salawat.
ثانية لحب الزهراء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
قال الله في محكم كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Interestingly, when I was searching for a topic to speak about in tonight's program, I was scrolling through the different sources, the different books and the ahadith, and I came across the book by Ayatollah Mutahhari, which goes by the name of Man and His Destiny. When I came across this book, I asked myself the question, did I come to this book by my own volition, by my own free will? Or did I instead come to this book by a predetermined script by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Indeed, it is the oldest question that the Muslims and the philosophers alike have discussed. Do human beings have free will? Do they have the ability to make their own choices? Or instead, is there some other outside external force controlling our actions? Now, this is not simply an intellectual topic. This is very important to understand. It is not an intellectual topic only. Because if we say that there is no free will, then everything from the beginning of time till now has no meaning, has no value. Because you press play effectively on a movie in which the script has already been written and in which we have no ability to say otherwise. So that means the choice of Adam alayhi salam in taking from the forbidden tree and descending down upon this earth towards the splitting of the seas of Musa alayhi salam and towards the divine revelation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And from there, the sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and to the revelation, inshallah, of Imam Mahdi Ajjallahu Farajahu al-Sharif, and the coming of his age. We don't even need to look further, to be honest. We look into our own lives and we see that the very events that have partaked, the very choices that we make in our lives have no value, right? And so it becomes paramount that as Muslims, we must stand steadfast on this point that we do have free choice. Now, I'm going to spoil it right from the beginning. The Islamic Shia position regarding free choice is as follows. We have limited free will in the confines of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system. Okay? Now, let's take this and let's now look at what all the other different scholars, the theologians, the philosophers, and all those who speak of knowledge have attempted to take apart in this topic. What have they thought? Because we see that there's actually two divides. There is a divide within the Islamic Ummah itself. There is two different points of views. There are some that believe in the predeterminism. They believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has pre-written everything and that we as human beings have no free will. And there are others that believe that we have full free will. They believe completely in our free will. What we see when we talk about this sort of divide is that the discussion is not surrounding necessarily only rational arguments. They talk about Quranic ayats. They bring about Quranic evidence. Because remember, we're talking about the context here is the Islamic Ummah. So everyone believes in the sanctity of the Quran and the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at the external divide, on the other hand, what do we see? The external divide is between the atheistic position and the people that believe in Islam, or those that believe in religion, let's say. Here, the arguments posited or the arguments pushed forth by the people are mostly rational. They push forth different arguments based off their own scientific understanding, based off their own views of what constitutes a good argument. And inshallah, in today's talk, we'll be focusing mostly on the former, on the internal divide. And I'll inshallah talk about why this is the case. Because when we talk about these rational arguments, it's very easy to get carried away. Very easy to get stuck in these very, very convoluted arguments and not reach anywhere. So inshallah, we're going to focus more on the internal divide and only sprinkle slightly on the external divide. So inshallah, let us begin with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, the internal divide is based off Quranic ayats. Let's take some Quranic ayats regarding predetermination, so predeterminism. And to clarify for everyone, predeterminism is the belief that our life has been pre-established, that all the choices that we make do not have an effect on the end outcome, okay? And free will is the opposite, that our choices do have an effect. So, some ayat regarding predeterminism. We mentioned one right at the beginning, right? وَعِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحِ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. And that translates roughly to, let me get the ayah out. And with Allah are the keys of the unseen and the invisible. No one knows them except Him, and He knows whatever is in the land and in the sea. Not a leaf falls, but He knows it. And there is not a grain in the darkness of the earth, and not anything fresh, green, or dry, but all is recorded in a clear book. And so the people that support the predeterministic view, what will they say? They'll say that since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the very outcome of everything, and since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the cause of everything, therefore, human beings could not possibly have any free will, because we're all sort of under the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows every single choice we'll make. And so, how can these choices have any value? We take, on the other hand, ayat that do support free will. For instance, the ones that Brother Ja'far beautifully recited. Right? So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not change what is in a nation until they change what is within themselves. And so when we look at this sort of ayah, we're like, okay, there seems to be a contradiction in the Quran. And I put this in quotation marks because we know there are no contradictions in the Quran, right? There seems to be a contradiction on the outside glance, that there are ayat that support predetermination, ayat that support free will. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura, Surah Al-Insan. And these sort of ayat, there are ayat that say we have two choices. There are ayat that say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. How are we supposed to make sense of that and actually derive an answer that takes up all these ayat and doesn't explain any of them away in showy reasoning. And so inshallah, the way we're going to see this is we're going to see this through Imam Ali alayhi salam's beautiful answer, because of course he has the most beautiful of answers. That being said, before we discuss this, we need to give a bit of historical context for where this debate went. Because when we go towards the Umayyad time, so I want you guys to look back in history, towards the Umayyad time. Think Muawiyah's time. During Muawiyah's time, there existed two positions, the two positions that we made clear. Those that believed in predeterminism and those that believed in free will. They were respectively called the Asha'ira and the Mu'tazila, these two groups. Now, I want you guys to have a guess. What do you guys think was the more popular view? And anyone, feel free to raise your hand and give an answer. Which one do you guys think was the more popular view?
The free will, because people want free will.
Ahsant. 100%. Everyone wants free will, and this is the correct. That's what should have been. That's what should have happened. Unfortunately, there were political motivations. Unfortunately, and so the Asha'ira were the ones that actually sort of became the more popular option, and that's pretty obvious if you look towards the history. Imagine you're Muawiyah sitting down on your throne. You hear of these two groups, the Mu'tazila and the Asha'ira. One believes in predeterminism and one believes in free will. You think, wouldn't it be really nice if I could believe in predeterminism as the Khalifa? Because therefore that means there ultimately is no justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed me on this throne, and so therefore I am inclined, or I deserve this throne. And so when the poor man goes to Muawiyah and asks him, why am I not receiving the funds as promised, as you are the Khalifa, you were supposed to give me these funds, he'll just tell them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided this for you. And we see there's a clear problem in the predeterministic argument, that therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no justice. And we know justice is what we call a sifa dhatiyya. It is an internal characteristic to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be unjust. Now, that doesn't mean the Mu'tazila are therefore correct. The Mu'tazila have a different issue. The Mu'tazila say complete free will. There's a bit of an issue though. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. If you're claiming there's complete free will, what you're saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't know some of our actions. And that is akin to the worst of mistakes to make with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it's important that we take what we call an amran bayna amrayn. We take the middle of these two paths. And that is exactly what Imam Ali alayhi salam does. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we come to a meeting between Imam Ali alayhi salam and one of his Sahaba. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he was sitting under a wall. Imagine this wall. It's a very dilapidated wall, a broken down wall. It looks like it's about to collapse. He's sitting under this wall. He moves from a place like any sane human being would do if you know that the wall is going to fall on you. If I knew this roof was going to fall on me, I would move away from it. And inshallah, everyone would evacuate. Now, the Sahaba next to him, what did he say? He's like, are you, Imam Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, are you fleeing from a preordained destiny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for you? He's effectively saying, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had written for you to be crushed by this wall, then it is written, you should stay under the wall. Imam Ali simply replies, I am fleeing from one destiny to another. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The simplest of answers. And really, this is exactly what we need to see, because the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is built in relation to cause and effect. If I take this water and I throw it at someone, they will rightfully feel angry, right? Cause and effect. If I decide not to do this, in the very same manner, I will keep my friendship with some of my mates, for instance. In the same way, Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he's sitting under this dilapidated wall, there are two destinies that are for him. He could either stay under it or he could move away from it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this choice, but at the same time, He knows what decision we're going to make. And so the predeterminist will say, this doesn't prove anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still knows what we're going to do. How can we prove otherwise? And here, let's dissect what Imam Ali alayhi salam is really saying in this ayah, in a very logical and rational manner. Because in order to understand this truly, we need to understand the boundaries of free will. Now, if I decided to take 20 or 20 or 10 to 20 odd steps towards the end of this qa'ah today, or end of this hall, this has happened through time, right? It takes me maybe 20 seconds to get to the end of this hall. Pretty slow, but 20 seconds, let's say. Here we now have a timeline of events. We have past, we have present, we have future. And the choices that we make can only occur within this boundary of time. And so when the predeterminist says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows or has written down everything, what he is essentially saying is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the future, right? And because he knows the future, therefore we don't have any free will. That's essentially the point they're making. Now, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bound by time? That's the real question we have to ask ourselves. And the answer is an affirmative no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is outside of time. And so now I want you guys to imagine this timeline of past, present, future. I want you guys to imagine this timeline and imagine it shrink to one single line. This is the view that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take with regards to these matters. And now we have to be very careful with the terminology we use here. Remember this. Because even the very words we use are bound by time, right? If you look at the grammatical forms, past tense, present tense, future tense. When we talk about these matters, it's very hard to sometimes conceptualize how is it that past, present, future can be at once. And I want you guys to think of it as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has seen the end and the beginning all at once, right? There is no progression of events if you're viewing from outside of time. And so we have to make this clear. And I'll make this clear with an example, because we can actually see this in a very small scale with neuroscience, okay? So I'm gonna have my hand here, right? If I decide to move my hand extremely quickly down, like this, right? This is what we call a ballistic movement, right? Like a ballistic missile. It's a ballistic movement. It's a movement that's done with high velocity. Interestingly, what researchers and scientists found was that when someone does a ballistic movement like this, the electrical signals from your muscles to your brain and from your brain back to your muscles actually travel slightly slower than the action itself. And you might be asking, how is this the case? Well, it's because you've pre-planned the movement in your head. You've decided based off these different sequences in your head that I'm going to drop my hand in an extremely fast manner. To the point that when you reach this sort of level, you can't actually stop it, right? Now, how does this relate to what we're talking about? This actually tells us that free will only exists in the bounds of time. If I shorten time, I have less opportunities, less options, less choices. If I extend time, I have more options, more opportunities, and therefore I have more, let's say, vision of free will or choices. We have more potential futures that are outlined for us. And so therefore, indeed, there exists no contradiction between the two. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says this much more simply and much more eloquently than this. When a Sahaba, a companion, came to him and he asked him, is it predestination, destiny, qadar that is controlling us, or is it free will? He said, simply, raise your right leg. So the Sahaba raised his right leg. And then he asked him, I want you now to raise your left leg while keeping your right leg up. You guys can imagine this in your head. It's impossible to do, right? And so he told him, the first leg that you raise is your free will, the second leg is the determinism or the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we look no further than the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to truly hammer this point home. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And if my servants asked about me, tell them I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I will accept or I will answer the dua of a person if they asked. And so indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does take active action in our lives, but we must be ready to receive this active action and to receive this mercy. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Alhamdulillah, shukr, we've solved the problem, at least on the internal level. We've solved the issue in terms of the Islamic Ummah. If we look outside of this though, we see that the atheistic position have something called scientific determinism. Obviously these guys don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so what will they claim? Their claim is instead that there exists no free will because the chemicals and the physical matter within this world interacts in such a way that it causes a predictable outcome. So when we flip a coin, for instance, right, people might say this is a random event. A scientific determinist will instead say, no, this is not random. If we knew the trajectory of the coin, if we knew the wind resistance, and if we knew how fast the coin was moving, we would be able to predict whether it's heads or tails. Now, We can go on and on and on about the arguments for and against this. Philosophers have tried to dissect this for 300, 400 years, and they're still going on. There is one simple point we can make to absolutely remove the need to even discuss this fully, and that is this. I have never seen a scientific determinist ever act according to their ideology. Not a single one. Not a single one who claims that this life, we have no free will, and that everything is just the neurochemicals of our brain that causes our emotions, and that these emotions cause our actions. All of this, none of them will then go and act as if free will doesn't exist. I mean, we don't see a lot of serial killers, do we? We don't see a lot of people that do, extremely heinous things and feel good about it. They still know it's bad. And so there exists a gap between theory and practice with regards to this ideology. And you can't really take an ideology seriously if it has a gap between theory and practice, because it fundamentally fails in the real world. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. However, we do have to give due credit to some of these people, because some of these people came to the same conclusion that we came towards, and that they realized that if there is a gap between theory and practice, there exists some sort of problem in the ideology. So these people, mostly atheists as well, they're like, how are we going to solve this problem? Obviously, we act as if free will exists, but determinism seems to govern our lives according to the scientific rules. And so they decided that we should actually establish our entire ideology around free will. They decided that we're going to talk about the one thing that science doesn't talk about, our self-identity, our consciousness, the one thing that science still hasn't touched yet, and we're going to make this the basis for our entire ideology. That indeed, humans are born free. And so everyone clapped their hands, we've solved the problem that, by the way, they created. So they created a problem, they've solved it. But then they came across another problem. They're like, we have this free will, but what are we supposed to do with it? Because if you don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you have no foundation for your meaning. And so these people, what do they decide? We have to create our own meaning. We have to derive our own purpose in life. And so you have these philosophers that came up and talked about noble pursuits, and how you must take it upon yourself to create your own meaning in a world that has no meaning. Two problems arose from this that they realized. One, how can we determine which meaning is more valuable than another meaning? And this is important. You might say that all the same value. But if we use the example of the serial killer once again, if a serial killer decides that his meaning in life is to kill people, are we going to say that this person has the same level of meaning as someone that, for instance, decides to serve the community? It doesn't really make sense. Secondly, some of these guys realized that overall, people were tending towards the same purpose. That people were actually choosing, when they told them to choose your own meaning, they were choosing the very same things that people were choosing thousands of years ago. And so they're like, wait a second. I think we've reinvented the wheel here. I think we've been back to square one. And to really hammer home that this is really reinventing the wheel, there's a philosopher by the name of Charles Taylor, still alive by the way, who mentioned in a stroke of genius that human beings are oriented towards the good. This was his ideology. Human beings orient themselves towards a purpose, towards the good. And so I was sitting down reading this, and I'm like, I could swear I read that somewhere else. Where? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So direct your face or purpose to the religion of pure faith, inclined to truth, as an upright man by nature, adhering to the nature upon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala originated mankind. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And we find that the Islamic scholars talked about this as well. Look into Ibn Sina's works, and he talks about it when he talks about the movement from potentiality to actuality, the movement from potential to making this potential true. And we see this in Tabataba'i's works as well, when he talks in Risalat al-Wilaya, and he says that a human being orients themselves towards perfection. Now though, what's very interesting, is that we see this very same fitrah, this very same inclination towards purpose, also appear in those that are evil. And I'll give you an example. If you have someone, say like Muawiyah, someone that is a tyrant and who hoards the wealth for himself, this sort of person also has a purpose, also has a version of perfection that they've created. Indeed, for Muawiyah, his version of perfection may have been power. And so for him, the orientation towards the good is ultimate power. For someone else, let's bring Elon Musk. I can't speak to his intentions, but Elon Musk, mashallah, is a rich man. Elon Musk is orienting himself towards wealth. And others may orient themselves towards glory, beauty, and all these different things. And so, when people say, I have no God, you need to revise that claim. For perhaps they've chosen another Lord, something else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this really goes back to why I chose the talk for this speech. It's a very vague sort of title. But I decided that I'll call it the chains of freedom. Why? Because it is the very people that preach of liberty and preach of freedom within the society now that are the most chained of all. They say that those that follow religion, that follow rituals and prayers, that follow all these different things are bound. They have no freedom. Their time is being spent for things that they do not decide for themselves. And that they instead have the choice. I can take a sip, I can go to the pub, I can go, we had Melbourne Cup recently, gambling away their funds. Is that true freedom though? Or have they just chosen another Lord for themselves? Have they chained themselves to something completely different? And so when they tell you, and when they tell us, why did you chain yourself to religion, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you could instead relax, take it easy, and have no integrity with your principles? And we reply, we chained ourselves to what is infinite. We chained ourselves to something that is beyond time and space. We chained ourselves to the only thing that can make us free. And they reply, what do they say? They say, why would you chain yourself to the infinite when chaining yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does that presuppose? It presupposes that it is necessary for us to live to our potential. It is necessary to fulfill our purpose as human beings, and that is very hard to do. And this is actually something that you'll hear when you talk about this sort of topic. There are some thinkers and intellectuals, what do they think? They think that free will itself is actually an evil, because responsibility comes with free will. And the responsibility is too hard to bear. But we reply with one thing, and one thing only: death. Because when you're in a system, like the system we're in currently, in which death exists, you are forced to prioritize what you believe to be worth working towards. You cannot say, I will drink alcohol, and then I will go pray. It is impossible to do this, because you are becoming a hypocrite, and you are equivocating between two paths. And the reality is we do not have time to equivocate between two paths. Death is the ultimate inevitability. It ultimately determines that we must make a stand, we must make a choice. And so, when those of the belief that there is determinism, or those of the belief that we should live to our desires, actually come and awaken sometimes, and they see around them, they see that there's actually anxiety and agitation around them. And there's a nice example we can use. I want you guys to think of a ship. Imagine we're sailing on the seas. We're sailing on the seas and we are the sailor. The one we spoke of before is very similar to what? He's like the sailor that leaves the steering, right? He leaves the navigation process and instead goes upon and starts partying with his crewmates. He starts instead eating and drinking. All the while there are storms whirling about in the sea around him. And as he does this, there are sometimes moments in which he comes and awakens. He looks around him. The seas are stormy. He's in the middle of the sea. He doesn't know where he's going. And in those moments, he sees a profound sense of dread and emptiness. But he goes back. He goes back. He watches the Netflix. He binges the shows. He plays the games. And he numbs himself to the true reality. But sometimes, there are some seas that are too strong to ignore. There are some seas that will rip you towards awakening. And it is those seas, those tragedies, those sufferings that will awaken us, and they will tell us, you must make a choice. Either in this situation, you decide, I'm in the middle of a sea and I must orient myself towards a port. I must go towards somewhere. Or you decide, I can't believe it, I was faced with these seas. And you become the cynic, you become those that believe in the meaninglessness of life. And that's a very, very sad life. It's a very sad life. And so those that make the decision instead to take upon themselves to take responsibility, they make themselves towards a port, towards an island, find the treasure, because they know they have to come back to the island, which is death, and eventually show what they have gotten within this world. And indeed, free will is the fulcrum. It is the pivot points by which all of this happens. Because free will provides us the choices that we need to make across the stormy sea of life. Very interestingly, we see that there are habits within ourselves, right? We can pass upon our life 3 years, maybe 3-4 years in our life, without even realizing that such an amount of time has passed. That our habits will just take us forward. They'll take us and we won't even realize that we've been sort of operating on autopilot. We've been operating on this sort of mode in which we haven't actually actively thought about the decisions we want to make, the principles we want to uphold, and what we want to become. Because there is one reality, and I'll make this very clear, that fundamentally, human beings can become more than what they are. Human beings have the ability to become more than what they are. It is the fundamental paradox of humanity, that they can become more than what they are currently are. Because when you do not do what you please and instead do what you should, instead take responsibility, you become able to be greater than what you were, and become therefore a greater man and a holder of a noble destiny. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so I want to end this here. I don't want to tawil alaykum. I don't want to become too annoying with this talk. Reassess our lives. Let's look at the choices we've made. I'm sure there are a lot of bad choices we've made and a lot of good choices we've made along the way. We need to understand that the second worst sin you can do is believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive your sins. And so understand this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give us free will so that we could despair, but He gave us free will so that we could hope. So that we know that we have the power within us to transcend. Transcendality. That is the fundamental nature of religion and of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gift to us. And so, let us be the victors over our body. Let the soul be the victor over the body. The jihadul akbar, the greater struggle. Let us have responsibility over desire, and let us have freedom over the cheap iteration that is being sold to us today. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you, Brother Ali, for that very insightful and beneficial speech. Okay, so I'm sure most of you have heard, hopefully, by now that we will be having a debate competition, inshallah, in about 2 weeks. And so far, we have only half of the amount of people that we would like. Alhamdulillah, we've got 1 girl so far and 2 guys. So, inshallah, if we do have enough female candidates and, of course, enough male candidates, then we may be able to have a girls team and also a boys team, so girls versus boys. So if you are interested, please do approach one of us later, and inshallah we'll be able to give you a little bit more information about that. Donations. Okay, and just one final announcement. So thank you all so much for the donations that we receive from the community. Without them, we wouldn't be able to sustain and continue our programs. So thank you very much for your support. Each program does cost us around roughly $300 to $400 to run. So if you are interested in supporting us, you can either donate on a one-off basis, either by putting in, following the details on the screen or the donations box at the back. Or if you are interested in becoming a regular supporter, then this could be as little or as much as you would like, as often as you like, so every fortnight or on a monthly basis. So if you would like a little bit more information about that, then please feel free to approach either myself or someone else on the team. And I think that's it in terms of, So inshallah, now we will be moving on to the next part of this evening's program, and that will be the trilogy hunt, and that will be run by Brother Hamid Rasa.
Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right, now's the fun part, where we stand up and move around a little bit. All right, trilogy. We all know what a trilogy is. Typically, we see it in movies. There's 3 movies that are related to each other. We call it a trilogy. The actual definition of a trilogy is just any 3 things that are related to each other. So, the game we're going to play tonight is called Trilogy Hunt, because the way it's going to work is each person's going to have a piece, like one piece of 3 pieces that are connected to each other. On each piece is some sort of statement or concept or ayah from the Quran, or like a clue about something or a particular personality, for example. And you've got to walk around and find the other 2 people that have the concepts or the ayat or the personality that are all related to each other. All right? So to give you an example, one of them might say, turned the stick into a snake, lived in the time, another one might say, lived during the time of a pharaoh, and another one might say, the sea split open to let him pass, right? So you're immediately connecting the dots. Oh, that's Prophet Musa. I've got to go find which other 2 are related to Prophet Musa, for example. Now, just keep in mind, some of them are a bit more tricky than others. So think outside the box. Sometimes it might be like a concept rather than a person. All right? So the way it's going to work, our volunteers are going to put them around your heads. Like this. Hopefully you don't have a big head like me. And then, you're just going to walk around and trying to match them together. And as you can see, they're cut into 3 pieces. It should form an A4 paper. All right? Now, there may not be enough to give every single one of you. MashaAllah, it was a big turnout. So those of you who don't get one, just help the rest of the people to find the ones that they connect with. And inshallah, have a little bit of competitive element. We'll have, so the sisters have the same ones that the brothers have. So we'll give you guys 10 minutes once they're all ready, and we'll see if the sisters get them finished before the brothers or not. And Sallallahu Muhammad wa Is that clear?
Justice
clear?
and equality, as it would be full justice and
Just a small disclaimer, the males do not need to mix with the females, okay? All the females have all theirs within the females. I'm not seeing a lot of movement, guys. You need to move around, you need to talk to everyone else, you need to find out what they have. You're not going to solve this anytime soon. All right, guys, it's official. The timer is on. You got 10 minutes. Tick tock, tick tock. Your pride is on the line. Males versus females. Who will win?
No one has me. What are you? Let me use this because that's why you're in the well. That's why. That's good.
Need to move more, guys. Need to move more. If you don't know what you have, ask around, ask some of the elders. Maybe they can give you some hints.
Stay together. Talk to each other. And find the third person.
If you think you found something but you're not sure, use the shapes of the paper to work out if it's the correct fit or not. So you can use the shapes to help you as well. Only 5 minutes, guys. Only 5 minutes. Well, I don't know about the females, but the males have already found a couple. I should reverse that actually. The females have almost finished. Alright, last few minutes, last few minutes.
Slide or broccoli.
I need anything to come on. I'm looking اصل مظاهر مظاهر
Two minutes to go, 2 minutes. Are we finished? Do we need more time? Or shall we wrap it up? If you're finished, maybe sit together or stay together with your trilogy pair. All right, just over a minute to go, just over a minute.
It's like, it doesn't stop.
60 seconds to go. Looks like the sisters have all wrapped up nicely. Brothers are pretending not to be finished so they can enjoy a bit more social time. over. I've wrapped it up. 30 seconds short. Game over, everyone. Settle down. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Look, I'm told the pizzas is here, so I'll be relatively quick. I'm just going to read out the 15 correct trilogies. And if you want, you can go, yeah, if you got it right. And we'll see if you got them all right and who got more right. And we'll finally end this battle of who's superior, the males or the females. All right, you have to excuse me on my tiny little phone. The first trilogy was Shepherd's Dog, locked away for 309 years, died prostrating in a cave. And these are Ashab al-Kahf, the people of the cave. So well done if you got that. That's number one. Second one, the only people of a prophet that were spared from God's prescribed punishment. A prophet that turned away from his people too early. And then there was a verse from the Holy Quran, there is none worthy of worship except you, glory to you, indeed I have been of the transgressors. And this is all in relation to Prophet Yunus. It's a bit of quiet here, I don't think we got that one. Did we get that one? Well done. All right, trilogy number 3. Intentionally damaged a boat to prevent it from being seized. Murdered the young person to prevent, no, not murdered, sorry. Ended the life of a young person to protect his believing parents from overbearing struggle. Restored a damaged wall to protect the hidden treasure of young orphans, and that was in relation to Al-Khadr. Well done. Some of the text might be different on my phone, so excuse me there. Number 4, a scribe for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Died and buried in Syria after being poisoned. Appointed governor of Bahrain by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was Aban, who was a companion of the Prophet. Nice one, well done. Number 5, these ones are all long verses of the Holy Quran, so I'm gonna, the ones that you're very familiar with. The first one was a verse on the event of Mubahala. Just come, let us call our sons and our women and your women, and ourselves and yourselves. Then there was another verse on, I'll just read, I'll paraphrase it. We feed you only for the sake of Allah, seeking neither reward nor thanks from you. That was the second part of the verse. So it starts with, they are those who fulfill their vows.
I think they know themselves.
Yeah. And the third one was, say, I do not ask you, actually no, I think I changed that one. Sorry, I should have updated this one. I think the third one was the ayah of Tathir. Yes, so that was relating to Ahlul Bayt. So well done, that was an easy one. Number 6, led an uprising to seek vengeance for martyrs of Karbala. Was imprisoned during Ashura. And then there was a quotation, oh, the avengers of Hussein. And this was all related to Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Well done. And then number 7, master of all women of all worlds, buried in a secret location, gave sermon opposing selection of Abu Bakr as a caliph. And that was Fatima al-Zahra. Number 8, this was in relation to Prophet Yusuf. My Lord, I would rather be in jail than do what they invite me to, etc. When they saw him, they were so stunned by his beauty, and they brought his shirt stained with false blood. Easy one, nice, well done. 9, so we subjected to him the wind. This was Prophet Sulaiman. And among the jinn were those who worked for him. And the verse where he smiled in amusement at the ant's words. Easy one, well done, almost there. Number 10, Prophet Muhammad took a handful of dust and blew it into the air. There was an ayah from in the Holy Quran, indeed I will reinforce you with the thousands from the angels, rank after rank, and a battle in which 313 Muslims participated. This was the Battle of Badr. Well done. It's looking like we all got them. So you know, you're just listening to me reciting them all. Very agonizingly slow. A battle in which the Prophet lost a tooth. A battle when a voice was heard, there is no youth but Ali, and no sword comparable to Dhul Fiqar. And a battle in which, I think I changed this one as well, but that was Battle of Uhud. I think, can't remember what the third one was. Something about... Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Ahsant. And the last two, one was about Riyah. When they stand up to prayer, they stand up sluggishly. Imam al-Sadiq narrated, Riyah in any of its forms amounts to shirk or polytheism. And narrated from Imam Ali, there are three distinguishing features of one accustomed to Riyah. He expresses joy and cheerfulness when he is greeted by people, becomes cheerless and sullen and alone, and he wishes to be praised for everything he does. Well done. Almost there. One who dies without recognizing the Imam of his time dies the death of ignorance. Surely we do not neglect your condition, nor are we forgetful of your remembrance. Had it been so, then terrible calamities would have struck you and your enemies would have destroyed you. He will fill the earth with justice and equity as it would be fraught with injustice and oppression. This is all in relation to the Imam of the time, or Imam al-Mahdi Ajjallahu Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif. All right, this one was 3 verses of the Holy Quran, which generally talked about signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who reflect. That was the connecting point. And they are long narrations, so again I'll paraphrase them. One of them starts with, eat of all the fruits and walk in the ways of your Lord submissively. And then it ends, most surely there is a sign in this life of bees for people who reflect. Second one, and it is he who spread the earth and made it firm, etc., etc. Most surely there are signs in this for people who reflect. And the third one, to Allah belongs the dominion of the heaven and the earth, etc. And the alternation of the night and the day are signs for those of understanding. And finally, the last one regarding Imam al-Jawad, the youngest to become an Imam and be martyred, demonstrated his intellectual prowess by answering difficult questions on Islamic law at a young age. And a narration from the Imam, 3 things take one to the contentness of Allah, asking Allah for forgiveness often and always, being lenient, giving charity. And there are 3 things whoever has will not regret: avoiding hastiness, consulting with others, and relying on Allah when determining something. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. All right. Yes?
Can we just recite salawat for the people who made a great effort, staying a really long time, making these amazing game things, because I know how long and how hard you've worked on it. Thank you so much. Salawat for them.
All right, honestly, did all the boys get it right? All the sisters got it right? And unfortunately, this battle has not ended. So we'll have to do another competition, inshallah, to determine the winner. All right, thank you everyone for your... You did it. Oh no! We'll just pretend, we'll cut that out of the video. We did not hear that. No, thank you for your honesty. I'll leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed the program tonight. A loud salawat and enjoy your pizza.
Thank you.